Hi, this is Luis Flores from Mexico, and I'm doing the week 4 assignment for Coursera Introduction to Music Production. And for this week, I choose the topic Describe the concept behind dynamic processors and describe threshold, ratio, attack, and release. Well, dynamic processors are rule-based gain controls. They can reduce the dynamic range like the compressors, or they can increase the dynamic range like the expanders. And in a simple way, we could say that dynamic processors writes a fader. This means that they move a fader up and down opposite to the dynamics of the performance. We have 4 parameters on dynamic processors that are threshold, ratio, attack, and release. The threshold is the level at which the dynamic processors starts to function. The ratio is the amount of compression once the signal crosses the threshold. The ratio is expressed as a ratio, as input to output, or we could say 2 to 1, 3 to 1, 4 to 1, 10 to 1, 40 to 1. And the higher ratio, the more extreme the dynamic processing is. The attack is how fast the processing of the signal is going to start. And the release is how fast the processing of the signal is going to finish. Well, here we have the parameters on some plugins on a DAW. First, I have a compressor, and I have the threshold that sets the point at which the level will start coming down. In terms of the volume fader, when signal gets above threshold, the level will start coming down. Below threshold, compressor does nothing. And then the ratio that controls the amount of compression once the signal crosses the threshold. And since it is a ratio, is set on terms of 1 to 1, 2 to 1, in general, input to output. That means that if input is, for example, 3 decibels, output will be 1 decibel. The attack, that is gonna be how fast the volume comes down when the sounds go above the threshold. The release, that it's gonna be how fast the volume comes back up after the sound has gone below the threshold. I have here the need to avoid linearity, and I make up to gain volume. And here we have our transfer function with input, output. We can find these parameters on different compressors. This is the threshold, the ratio, the attack, the release, and there is no transfer function, but I can see here the input and the output. I also have the makeup to gain volume, and I can choose RMS or peak. And I have here another compressor with the ratio, the threshold, the attack, and the release. Here I have a limiter. Well, a limiter is a compressor with a very high ratio, about 10 to 1. The threshold sets the limit point, or the point at which limiter will start to work. Then the attack, that controls how fast the limiter is going to start its work, and the release, that controls how fast the limiter is going to stop its work. The input, output, on limiter we don't have ratio because we already know that is a compressor with a high ratio. Here I have a noise gate. The threshold sets the level at which the gate is gonna be open. Below the threshold, the gate is gonna be closed, and basically we will hear nothing. The attack controls how fast is the gate gonna be open, and the release controls how fast the gate is gonna be closed. Well, here I have an expander, and an expander is a compressor in reverse. Here I can set the threshold, the ratio, the attack, and the release. And we already know that works like a compressor, but the expander increases the dynamic range. Well, I'm gonna mention that we must experiment with dynamic processors. I mean, we can do some sound experiments. We can take one of our tracks and we can put a compressor on it and then change the parameters. So change the threshold, the ratio, the attack, the release, and see what is happening with our sound. Is our sound changing when I change the parameters? And go on practicing, make more experiments, and I believe that that is the best way to get better, to improve the use of dynamic processors and to have a better understanding of dynamic processors. Well, thank you for taking time to watch this video. Bye.